Here in the Bluegrass, there's a few things you can always count on. A friend who's got your back. Family always looking out for each other. A community standing strong in the toughest of times and celebrating when we're at our best. That's why people have trusted LEX18 for more than 6 decades. Central Kentucky's first television station, powering forward to the future, helping you make sense of a changing bluegrass, keeping your family safe from the storm, and digging deeper to find the heart in every story, with compassion and experience that make a big difference. Sure, we'll always face new challenges, but what's important stays the same. Count on LEX18 for the things that count. Count on LEX18 News.
We're digging deeper into the criminal past of the accused DUI driver who Lexington police say caused a fiery wrong-way interstate crash that killed 3 people.
LEX18 investigates after the mother of a Lawrenceburg man who died in the Franklin County jail filed suit saying her son should still be alive.
And a warning from local health officials about the dangers of vaping. LEX18 News at 6 starts now. Good evening, I'm Kevin Christopher.
And I'm Nancy Cox. Thank you for joining us at 6. A fiery wrong-way crash on I-75 in Lexington left 3 women dead last night.
Now, police say they believe alcohol or drugs may have been factors in that crash. And records show the driver has a long criminal history, including 4 previous DUIs. LEX18's Carolina Buchek has the big story at 6.
It took hours of investigation to figure out how this accident actually unfolded. And Lexington police say there are so many layers to this fiery crash. What started off as a police chase ended up with 3 people dead.
The crash happened in Lexington around 10:15 last night, but police say this actually began in Clark County. And that's where Winchester police say an officer and a sheriff's deputy tried to pull a Ford F-150 over because the driver, 42-year-old Tammy Rodriguez, was speeding and swerving across several different lanes. But she did not stop, so they followed the truck into Lexington. That's where police say Rodriguez merged from I-64 west to I-75 north, made a sudden U-turn, and drove in the wrong direction.
A Lawrenceburg mother says her son should have walked out of the Franklin County Regional Jail alive after his January arrest on drugs and other charges. Instead, he left in a coroner's van.
Now, Dylan Stratton's mother is suing the jail and others for wrongful death, among other things. LEX18's Lee Searcy viewed hours and hours of jail video leading up to Stratton's death and has this LEX18 special report. Now, we do want to tell you that some parts of the story may be upsetting to watch.
Let's make sure I got technique. Is that it? That's it?
In 2015, Dylan Stratton's fellow seniors at Anderson County High School voted him class clown. That's the tender-hearted son Leslie Glass remembers.
He had a great sense of humor. He laughed all the time.
After graduation, Stratton tried college, but ended up working different jobs. His mother says he was still trying to find his way, still struggling with the recent death of his stepfather.
They were pretty close, you know.
That was hard on him.
Yeah.
Then, January 17th of this year, police arrested Stratton on wanton endangerment and drug charges after a fight with a friend. He admitted using marijuana and ecstasy on top of his high blood pressure medicine. This would be his first and last trip to the Franklin County Regional Jail. Less than a week later, Glass says Dylan died naked and alone in a detox cell.
Why? That's the question that I keep asking. Why? Why wouldn't anyone help him?
Glass is suing the jail and its private health services provider for negligence and wrongful death, claiming Dylan would not have died but for defendants' gross, unconscionable, and deliberate indifference to the tortures of his untreated benzodiazepine withdrawal.
I know they could have taken him to the hospital. He would have been okay.
The day of his arrest, Stratton could walk and talk, as seen here at his video arraignment.
Mr. Stratton, are you going to hire an attorney to represent you?
I'm gonna get one because this is ridiculous.
Yeah, it really is.
The next day of Friday, he was on video being moved to a private cell after Glass said he had a seizure for the very first time.
I just told him, well, they're not going to let anything happen to you. Just, calm down.
Here's a time-lapse look at Stratton through Monday. He's observed rolling on the floor, flailing his arms, and according to the lawsuit, was making delusional statements such as, "Please start the car." The suit states deputies contacted a mental health center that determined Stratton was actively psychotic and to use the safety chair. A nurse did give him Gatorade. By Tuesday morning, Stratton is seen in another court video sitting in a chair, barely responding to the judge.
Mr. Stratton, did you hire an attorney or did you ask me to appoint public defender's office for you?
I'm not really truthfully sure.
Watch as even the judge appears alarmed by Stratton's deteriorating condition and the condition of another inmate.
Is this a detoxing situation? What is going on?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have they been medically treated?
Yes, Your Honor.
Less than 24 hours later, Dylan Stratton was found dead in his cell. The coroner ruled as cause of death cardiac dysrhythmia and noted obesity and drug use.
All they had to do was take him to the hospital, get him some medical attention.
The family's attorney, Greg Belsley, believes the jail's own video tells the story.
I challenge anybody to watch that video and not be appalled.
He says the day before Stratton died, a nurse practitioner was at the jail, but never saw Stratton because he was not put on her patient list.
At some point, you've got to say, where does human decency come into all of this?
For the past month, we have tried repeatedly over the phone and in person to talk to Franklin County jailer Rick Rogers about Dylan Stratton. He has never once returned our calls and has since retired. This complaint raises serious questions about Dylan's jail medical records. Here's a copy of Dylan's observation chart given to the coroner the day he died. Of his nearly 6 days in jail, a nurse documented only 2 days' worth of his medical entries and circled no for signs of weakness, confusion, and slurred speech. His mother's suit alleges Southern Health Partners, the company contracted by the jail to treat inmates, later submitted fabricated records that showed 2 pages of entries. Remember his last court appearance just hours before he died? That same day, Southern Health Partners' own monitoring form for Stratton documented no across the board for weakness, confusion, and slurred speech.
They should be ashamed of themselves. I mean, what kind of medical establishment are you?
Here in black and white, the company's own withdrawal form requires staff to report all findings to the medical director if a patient is not progressing well. In bold print, it says if there are changes or deterioration, to notify physician immediately. Stratton's mother wants to know why the company didn't follow its own policies.
I just would not think that they would not do what they're supposed to do as a human being. How do you not care for someone?
We called Southern Health Partners for answers. An attorney referred us to the company's response to the lawsuit, which claims its staff acted in good faith and that if Stratton suffered any harm, it was as a result of his own actions, not those of Southern Health Partners.
Why? That's the question that I keep asking. Why? Why wouldn't anyone help him? And I can't get past that. He made some mistakes and he'd done some things he shouldn't have, but he was just 21. He was just a kid. He didn't deserve to suffer at all.
Lee Searcy reporting. Stratton's family says the morning he died, jail staff took his friend, who was arrested with him and also detoxing, straight to the hospital. He lived. Frankfort police investigated the death and consider the case clear of criminal wrongdoing.
After the state recanvasses the votes, Governor Matt Bevin still has one option. He can contest the election here with the state legislature. But since this building has been here, it has not happened. But if we go way back into Kentucky's history, we see that it did, just once. And it happened here at the old State House after a bitterly fought governor's race back in 1899. And that situation ended with this man, Governor William Goebel, being assassinated.
He became sort of an instant martyr.
To understand what exactly happened to Governor Goebel, LEX18 turned to the Kentucky Historical Society, where they took us into this room, which they like to call Kentucky's attic. And deep into the archives, neatly packed into this box.
The back of the shirt has been opened up by the surgeon.
Is the history of the assassination of Governor Goebel.
This is the shirt that Governor Goebel was wearing on that fateful day. And the bullet entered just under his arm there and exited about 2 inches lower in his back.
Goebel, who is the only governor in the history of the United States to be assassinated, ran for governor in 1899 as a Democrat.
The whole election from the primaries on is really, really ugly and kind of shady too.
He lost the race by a little more than 2,000 votes. But thanks to a new law he created a few years before, he was able to contest the election.
You're watching LEX18 News, State of the Commonwealth.
When Black Jewel Mining declared bankruptcy in July, mines were closed across the country and hundreds of miners lost their jobs. But when workers in Harlan County heard the coal they mined was loaded onto a train, they took a stand, a 2-month protest that gained global attention. Now the harsh reality. In December 2018, the unemployment rate in Harlan County was just above 6%. In June, the month before the shutdown, 8.8%. In the last numbers released by the Kentucky Center for Statistics, the rate has risen to 13%, the highest in the state. This shutdown affected the entire community.
It's the reason we're here. It's the origin of our existence.
My dad and my brother both were miners.
My dad too. That's what we do here.
In the hills of eastern Kentucky, Harlan County was established 200 years ago.
This is truly one of the most beautiful places in America.
But it was the resource deep in those beautiful mountains that put this place on the map in the early 1900s, King Coal. Towns were built overnight, homes, schools, hospitals were constructed, and thousands of men went to work underground.
Mining is our bloodline here, and it's how our families make a living. It's how they pay their bills. It's how they raise their kids.
As coal companies boomed and busted over the past half-century, some miners have left Harlan County, but many families have stayed. Will Stanton says that he has been through more mine shutdowns than he can count.
7 or 8, yeah. It's on average about once every 2 years anymore. I mean, that's just part of it.
This summer, Stanton and hundreds of other miners were laid off when the Black Jewel mine in Cumberland shut down. They had money taken from their bank accounts, money they had earned.
You know, when this first happened, we just basically lived day to day trying to figure out what's going on.
Once word spread that Black Jewel wanted to move coal that they had mined, a protest began on the tracks outside of Cumberland. One that began with a few miners, including Jeffrey Willig, and it quickly grew into a summer-long campout along train tracks.
I think we took a stand. It's definitely put a spotlight on bad coal operators.
A stand that united an already tight-knit community.
I mean, we come together, we're like a sisterhood now. They've always had their brotherhood, but now we have our sisterhood.
With the support of his wife, Will Stanton is now looking for his next underground job.
I mean, it's what we all know around here. It's what we all love. I know a lot of guys down here went to truck and going back to school and all that, but most of us, we want to go back to mining.
It looked like the sun was coming up at 11 o'clock last night.
You can't describe it any better than Joe Carter just did. A lightning strike was the likely cause of fire at this Jim Beam barrel house, wiping out 45,000 barrels of bourbon. But with the fire now contained, there are much greater concerns than just destroyed alcohol.
At this point, the environmental impact is the bigger emergency, and we're trying to avoid making the mess bigger.
What they're trying to avoid is contamination runoff into Glynns Creek and then the Kentucky River. So for now, they'll let it burn off naturally, and that could last well into the night.
The distilled spirits are burning off with that. What that means is when they put water on it later to extinguish the fire, there'll be less contamination into Glynns Creek.
Phil Long is a former firefighter enjoying some shade on his nearby front porch.
It's almost impossible to put out.
He knows exactly what his fellow firefighters have been dealing with since last evening.
It'll burn in the ground for a long time after you get the flames out, till it burns the flames out of all the alcohol out of the ground.
45,000 barrels worth of Kentucky's famous alcohol. Now the fight to keep it out of the river begins. In Woodford County, Michael Burke, LEX18 News.
Count on LEX18 News.
Things got heated during today's State Board of Elections meeting, and LEX18 was the only TV crew present for what turned into quite an argument.
Police say 4 people in Montgomery County have been arrested after they stole industrial hemp.
And looking for a job, Toyota manufacturing plant in Georgetown is looking to hire for hundreds of positions. LEX18 News at 6 starts now. Good evening, I'm Nancy Cox.
I'm Kevin Christopher. Thanks for joining us at 6.
Yesterday, a judge ordered the State Board of Elections to put 175,000 voters back on the normal voter roll.
Well, today, the topic came up in a regularly scheduled State Board of Elections meeting. And the meeting quickly went from quiet and calm to loud and angry, with accusations of top-secret voter information being improperly revealed.
LEX18 political reporter Carolina Buchek has an exclusive big story at 6.
There was a transcript entered in the court record yesterday.
Today's State Board of Elections meeting started off normal, just following routine procedures.
Item number 3, ratification and approval of County Board of Elections.
But it ended with arguing, screaming, some cursing, and people storming out.
Hey guys, I'm sorry.
This was recorded while LEX18 was standing in the hallway waiting for an interview after the meeting. You can hear Secretary of State Allison Lundergan Grimes yelling in the background, and Jared Deering, the executive director of the State Board of Elections, telling LEX18 this is a circus. It ends with Grimes walking out.
We're going to go outside, folks.
So you're probably wondering, how did things end up like this? Well, it began when the meeting addressed yesterday's court injunction. A Franklin County judge said the State Board of Elections needs to take the 175,000 voters it previously listed as inactive and put them back on the normal voter roll.
The order is requesting that we provide information to the clerks and poll workers on how this should be implemented.
Deering explained that the voters will no longer be on an inactive list, but they will have an asterisk by their name on the voter roll. So this means when they go to vote, they'll be asked to update their address information to ensure they're voting in the correct spot. And here's where things got tense. The Secretary of State questioned whether the information in the system is accurate.
Is that information accurate and up to date? And that's my question, Mr. Chairman.
The board's executive director said information in the system is always changing, so results may be different depending on the time the system is accessed.
The voter registration system is a live system currently and always.
And that's when the Secretary of State brought up these poster boards. And the meeting got heated.
I don't know how many of y'all have access to our voter registration system.
Please don't put that on TV. Please do not put that on TV.
The posters show information on the voter registration system. And as soon as Grimes put the first one up, the board's executive director and a few other members got upset that this was being shown.
And everything, anything.
In the system. Please do not air that on television, sir.
Mr. Chairman, anything that is here, want to have the permission of the voter, and 2, anything that's not publicly available is redacted.
It's not about the voter and the voter's record. It's a snapshot of the system and how the system is laid out.
Well, I think this is instructive. We just shown the public.
This is a vast breach of our security net. Please do not do this.
Has anybody here got the national security clearance of top level?
Yes.
Yes.
You do. Top secret clearance. Because I just met with Earl Rose, who said no one else in the state but myself has it. So are you telling me you do? You are final clearance.
Jennifer has secret clearance, but the fact that you have top secret clearance does not denote that you're allowed to,
Mr. Chairman,
to release how our fields work.
I appreciate
it. Grimes says she put the board up to show the board errors in the system that caused people to be initially listed as inactive. She says a voter contacted her and told her that she was marked as inactive, and the Secretary of State says it shows that happened because her name was linked to an incorrect voter registration card.
This is Miss Valeria Bagley. We are marking her inactive on the basis of a card that's addressed to Tammy Jane Allen. There's no other way to show you all this because you aren't asking for the information, you aren't overseeing the information, so I'm bringing this forward to you today.
But several board members got upset because they say showing these boards, which show how the fields are laid out, could put Kentucky's system at risk.
Please do not put our system at risk by putting how our fields are laid out on television in the state. This is beyond irresponsible.
This is publicly available information.
It is not.
It's not publicly available. The picture of the inside.
Well, I, as chief election official, who is responsible for maintaining the system and publishing it to the public because they deserve to see.
The meeting eventually ended, and while our camera was off, Deering cursed at one of Grimes' staffers. He later apologized to us, but before that, this happened inside. The secretary claims someone said the board did not need to listen to her because her term is almost up. Afterwards, Grimes reiterated it was important to show these boards.
Was this an active list, or now known as an asterisk list? It's inaccurate. It's riddled with thousands of inaccuracies. People who are marked on the basis of only one card, people who are marked on the basis of cards not even addressed to them, people who have recently voted as recent as 10 months ago.
But Deering reiterated what the secretary revealed is dangerous.
Because of system securities, I think any IT professional or engineer will tell you there are some systems parameters that you don't publish and you don't make them public. And so I'm asking you as journalists, as professionals, as voters of the Commonwealth, I hope you're registered, that you not publish those.
LEX18 did not listen to that request because everything that was discussed at today's meeting happened in an open public meeting. And the information was released by the Secretary of State, an elected official. In Frankfurt, Carolina Buchek, LEX18 News.
Medical marijuana triggers emotional arguments from both sides. There are people that are very much against it. They say it's an illegal drug that should not be allowed here in the Commonwealth. But others say it's a type of medicine that works for them. And they want to be able to treat their pain and their symptoms using it without the fear of going to jail. But because it is still a crime, many people were afraid to go on camera to talk to us about it. But two men did. And they say they're willing to fight for medical marijuana.
Bottle after bottle of pills. Strong pills.
Some pain medications, some muscle relaxants, some vitamins, some blood pressure medicine, sleep aids.
This is what Jaime Montalvo's day revolves around.
I got on a pill diet, basically. I would wake up in the morning, take a fistful of pills. For lunch, I would have a smaller fistful, and then for dinner, I'd have a large fistful again.
This now empty bag is worth thousands of dollars.
They're very strong opioids in here.
And this is just some of what it takes to treat Montalvo's multiple sclerosis.
If you have a chronic illness and you're a disabled patient, you are prescribed minimum 3 to 5 prescriptions.
These pills are not Montalvo's. They're Chris Briesman's.
This is my pain medicine. This is methadone. It's a 5 milligram pill.
These pills help Briesman make it through the day, but they have side effects.
Pills in the morning, pills in the evening, and hope for the best.
His pain makes it impossible to work, so he spends his day taking things slowly. A few bites of food, some video games, and a small walk with his best friend Louie.
Nice, isn't it, Louie? Go on, go play.
But this is not how Briesman imagined his life.
This is from Whiteman Air Force Base. This is them telling me goodbye.
He once had a thriving military career.
I worked at Whiteman Air Force Base around the B-2s.
A career that was cut short.
The bullet went in here. It exited out my rear.
A gunman in Colorado almost killed him.
They think I died once.
Years later, he's left with these pills. Just like Montalvo is left with his. Both of these men have one more thing in common.
Cannabis was effective for me.
I just couldn't take it anymore and tried it, and the outcome was way more than anybody expected, and I've continued since.
Briesman says thanks to medical marijuana, he went from 29 prescriptions a day down to 3.
It all wipes away when I take a puff of cannabis.
Montalvo says medical marijuana also helped him out. So much so that he started growing his own under this porch behind closed doors.
Suppressed my nausea, my vomiting. I was able to sleep a little bit better at night. My pain went down.
But it all came crashing down when the bank down the street was robbed.
A guy robbed a bank at the end of my street, runs in front of my home, and behind him come cops with dogs. They smell my home, where I was growing right there.
Montalvo was arrested and ended up losing custody of his son.
I lost custody for 6 months, and it wasn't for cultivation, it wasn't for possession, it wasn't for trafficking. It was simply testing positive for cannabis.
Montalvo now fights in Frankfurt. He started Kentuckians for Medicinal Marijuana and lobbies to make cannabis legal. Briesman is a part of it too, fighting for what he calls his medicine.
I just want to pay my taxes on this stuff. I don't want to give my money to a drug dealer.
So one day in November was very special for a group of Lexington elementary school students who all received free coats to help keep them warm and cozy throughout the winter.
And Kristen Edwards shows us how a special guest, very familiar to True Blue fans, helped make the special delivery.
Yeah.
It was a double high five kind of day down at Booker T. Washington Elementary School.
We love our jackets!
One by one, every student was bundled up in a new winter coat.
They walked down the hall so proud. They love their new coats.
Interim Principal Betsy Rutherford says the jackets are the perfect gift. She estimates at least half of the students don't have one at home.
There were 2 kids walking in and they did not have coats. They had short sleeves and I said, "Where is your coat?" And they were like, "We don't have one." And I'm like, "That's okay, you're gonna get one today."
Which has been made possible with a $20,000 grant from United Healthcare.
It'll make me feel cozy.
I think it'll keep me warm. It's very comfortable. I love it. Thank you so much.
UHC volunteers stood side by side with basketball legend Rex Chapman, who works with the Dream Builders Foundation. Together, they passed out jackets to nearly 300 kids.
I woke up this morning, I have a great big dog. I woke up, started to take him outside, got outside, turned right around and said, "I got to get my coat." I can't imagine not, and especially as a young person, just not being warm enough. So it's a big deal.
A big deal that had them all walking away with a big smile and a pep in their step. Bye. In Lexington, Kristen Edwards, LEX18 News.
It may not be Kentucky, but still the sun was shining on this temporary home.
Kentucky! Kentucky!
An absolutely unbelievable win, bringing True Blue fans to the brink.
I was just believing in God at that point. I did not expect that. It was just an insane game. Go Cats!
Lynn Bowden Jr. leading his team to a Belk Bowl victory in his final performance as a Kentucky Wildcat.
Who's the legend?
Lynn Bowden!
We are the key Kentucky Wildcats.
Tension on the field between the teams could be felt in the stands, but ultimately it was the Cats who harnessed the energy and cranked out a win True Blue fans will never forget. 2 Lynn Bowden touchdowns, and that pass, the touchdown pass, to bring that victory home and earn him the title of MVP.
He never got rattled, he never got tired, marched us right down here. And don't forget the defensive play to end it on a defensive score, because this is Coach Stoops' program.
A storybook ending to Lynn Bowden's Kentucky career, and for the 11 other seniors playing their final game in Kentucky Blue, and Big Blue Nation is rejoicing.
We did it! I prayed for Kentucky to win. Hey, I'll be here and get my check. I'll be the money to get my check.
And yeah, we had the preacher man on our side. I don't know if you saw him there. I don't know who that man was, but he said he had been praying for Kentucky, and those prayers were answered. It was so much fun being down in the stands during those final moments. I just kind of joined in and totally celebrated, and it was something I will remember in my time here as a news reporter in Kentucky as part of Big Blue Nation for as long as I live.